a Tuesday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. Time now to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. Football on a Monday night. Giants hosting the Lions. All eyes on Odell Beckham Jr. making his long-awaited return, and it didn't quite go as planned as the Giants lost 24-10. OBJ only caught 4 passes for 36 yards as the Giants couldn't get anything going offensively. Odell and Eli Manning met the media after the game.
I just wanted to come out, see what I could do. You know, we limited it, and it felt good to be able to play again. It's been a long time, so just kind of getting your feet wet.
I got to find ways to play better, get more completions, convert on third down. That's a quarterback's job. He's got to find ways to move the offense and move the ball and score touchdowns. So we're not doing that enough.
So, Nick, the Giants had a lot of problems last night, and some of them were more glaring than others. But are there offensive problems beyond Odell Beckham's repair?
No. The Giants can still...
Wait a second. Now, you asked him the first question of the day.
Whoa.
The Giants' problems.
Yes.
Are they beyond Odell's repair?
Yes.
Okay, now go ahead.
What?
Because I didn't think you were off to the right track on this.
What do you mean? What?
Did he have the answer wrong?
Unless he's baby Jesus. Because they had a lot of problems.
Are you baby Jesus?
But go ahead. I'm going to allow you to go ahead and start it
They
off.
had a lot of problems, but you also had reasons last night for some optimism that they can fix them enough to let the defense be the defense. So, no, I don't think the Giants' season is lost. I don't think their offense is beyond repair. And I think we saw last night, even with just 4 catches for 36 yards, what Odell changes for them offensively. You saw, as opposed to week 1, when there were no dynamic playmakers on the field, you saw because even with a hampered Odell, the attention that had to be paid to him, what it allowed the tight ends for the Giants to do. Eli, in a mediocre, if not below average game, was 7 of 10 for 108 yards and a touchdown when targeting his tight ends. Why? Safeties couldn't worry about the tight end position because safeties were worried about Odell, even a gimpy Odell. You also saw that this game was going true to form for how the Giants won 11 games last year. Keep it close, have your defense choke them out late, and make 1 or 2 big plays. The problem was the big play was the punt return for Detroit that blew the game open, and Odell wasn't there to make his big play. He was there but was not able, because what we saw yesterday with the ankle was that Odell could still run his slant route, but that slant route that he was a threat to take to the house every game last year, he wasn't that threat yesterday. He caught the first 4 balls thrown to him, the final pass thrown to him of the game. He dropped. It would have been short of the first down anyway. So, listen, 0-2 is a bad place to be. 0-2 is a really bad place to be when your next 2 games are road games against Philly and Tampa. They have to get a lot of things fixed, most notably the offensive line. But you saw enough yesterday that was a difference from how that offense looked in week 1 to how it functioned in week 2, to where I think once Odell is fully healthy, you could see this team score 17 to 20 points, which is typically all they'll need to win.
Right. First things first. Odell played yesterday just on guts. He's about 75%. A number of players that I know, wide receivers, they wouldn't have been out there. And one was because he's limited on how far he could go down the field. The quick breaking routes, the end breaking routes, he was comfortable doing that. But you didn't see him stretch the field. Now, Nick has numbers that would say Odell catches a lot of short passes and make it on. But from a game plan standpoint, because you talked about him even being a decoy, opening up for the tight ends, yes, on the short stuff. But imagine even if he could take the top off the defense, right. If he could have ran deep post or takeoff routes down the sideline, it even opens up more space. He's a great football player. But as wide receivers, we're limited to the impact we can have on the game based upon the offensive line. And this is no indictment on college football, but people wonder, because you're hearing more and more conversations earlier in the season, why is their offense struggling? And the consistent theme is if you don't have a quarterback, it's your offensive line. And NFL general managers and head coaches have disregarded the offensive line. Now, the offensive linemen that we're getting out of college football, because college football is so much spread offense and it's not power football, just knock a guy back. So the training for young offensive linemen coming into the league is not up to par on the other skilled positions on the offensive side.
But, CeCe, that's where, if you're watching the game yesterday, that's where, and we'll talk about Ben McAdoo later, everyone recognized that Eric Flowers could not handle Ziggy Ansah and that he needed help. How do you not send a tight end to the left side when Ziggy Ansah is ruining your entire game?
This is the dilemma. That's why I don't think Odell can fix their problem. Odell being on the field, it opened up. You said Eli was 7 of 10 throwing to the tight ends.
Yep.
But you know how you help out a tackle? By leaving the tight end in. So now you have less receivers into the route. So now you have more defenders to defend Odell, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. So there's a huge numbers difference. So you're saying, okay, help the tackle. Yes, Flowers is not a left tackle. They drafted him in the first round. Their right tackle is a kid I love. I've been coaching him since he was 15, Bobby Hart. He got hurt, had a bad ankle. The right tackle, he's not a right tackle. Played college at Florida State. He's an interior guy. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. So Flowers and Hart, they can't be replaced. And you can't put tight ends, running backs blocking, helping them out because it makes it easier for the defense. So, yes, it was nice to see Odell out there. He's not 100%. But to me, that offensive line and Eli Manning at this stage of his career, those should be the conversations. Like, if you want some remedies, that's where you look. Look to number 10, all right, and look to the front office and the head coach to be able to fix that offensive line.
I was going to ask that. I mean, a lot of what we saw last night, I would say you guys especially, I saw it as someone just watching the game, that Eric Flowers, that the offensive line obviously didn't give Eli the best chance to hit who he wanted to hit, to stay up. The guy was sacked 5 times. But also look to Eli Manning, who had there were a couple of times last night where you questioned what he was doing, time management, things like that. How much of what we saw last night was, I know what you're going to say, Eli being 36 and just not as quick with everything, or the fact that he just wasn't given the best opportunity to play?
All quarterbacks, regardless of Eli's age, all quarterbacks, when they're hit early in the game, it affects them, regardless of how much experience they had. Now, Eli, that's what we saw last night. In the first quarter, I mean, he got hit immediately. So he knows the tone of the game. He knows I'm not going to have time. I'm going to be rushed. And as you could see, it affected his decision-making. Also, his ability just to do the basic things we ask quarterbacks to do. Listen to the play in your headset. It's in your helmet. All right? Get the formation, dictate it to the offense, and get in and out of the huddle.
Did you not see him do that?
No, it was very slow. For Eli, he's been in this offense long enough. Him and the head coach have had a great rapport. They should be able to call plays in situations like that weren't really stressful situations.
CeCe, that you're assuming something there that I don't know if it's fair, which is that he's getting the play in time. You're assuming that Ben McAdoo on his giant menu of plays is quickly getting the play in.
Right. Well, when the coach says after the game.
Well, and that's okay. I know we're going to get into that. I don't know how fair that was of McAdoo. But on Eli, I am an Eli critic. I've been an Eli critic. I'm a guy that does not think I'm a guy that does think, despite his 2 Super Bowls, that he is not a Hall of Fame caliber player. However, yesterday, the problem was not Eli Manning. Eli made one dreadful throw. He had Brandon Marshall wide open going across the middle. It would have been a first down. It might have been Evan Ingram. He was on the interception. I apologize. I can't remember who he was throwing it to. But it was wide open going across the middle. He let him way too much. It ended up being an interception. That can't happen. You can't miss that throw. But aside from that throw, I thought Eli showed guts. I thought he made some big throws when he knew he was going to get crushed. And his numbers speak to the fact that he actually played, given how much pressure he was under, pretty well. The Giants' defense held Matt Stafford, the league's highest paid player, to 122 yards passing, the second lowest of his career. You saw the elements to the Giants being who they were last year, a team with an excellent defense that makes just enough plays offensively. Odell was not 100%. When I tweeted before the game, I think the Giants win. I think Odell is a huge game. That obviously did not come to fruition. But you saw there are going to be people this morning that will use my favorite stat. You start 0-2, you miss the playoffs 88% of the time, and say the Giants season is over. I do not believe the Giants season is over, and there's no team in that division right now that looks amazing. Dallas showed flaws, right. Philly's shown flaws, Washington showed flaws.
But the Giants will have to find a way to score more than 20 points a game at some point,
Correct.
with or without Odell in the lineup, if they want to be competitive. Tough moment for the Giants in the 24-10 loss against the Lions. At the end of the third quarter, Eli Manning and Ben McAdoo had a miscue on a 4th and goal at the 2 that led to a delay of game. After the game, Coach Ben McAdoo discussed this play.
Sloppy quarterback play. Quarterback and the center need to be on the same page there. We got to get the ball snapped. We have a veteran quarterback who's played a lot of football. I expect us to get the ball snapped.
Former head coach Eric Mangini joins us, and when he was discussing this earlier, he called what Ben McAdoo said a compliment sandwich, which was...
No, what Jason Garrett did.
Oh, you thought Jason Garrett was a compliment sandwich. But you didn't have too big of an issue of Ben McAdoo calling out Eli Manning. I thought it was unnecessary for him to call out his quarterback, but you agree with me wholeheartedly?
Well, here's what I'd say about the timeout. I understand the timeout part of the equation, because when you have a veteran quarterback, usually you're going to allow him to make that decision. If it's a younger quarterback and you're not sure whether or not he can make that decision, you'd intervene. But with a guy like Eli, you're going to let him decide whether or not he has enough time to get the ball off. The sloppy quarterback play, that was a little bit more aggressive than Jason Garrett was. Do I have a problem with that? No, I don't really have a problem with it.
So it was sloppy quarterback play?
Well, in that situation, yeah, it was probably sloppy quarterback play.
Go ahead, Cecil.
Now, it was a combination of sloppy quarterback play, and he talked about the center. And the reason why, in the video, you could see that the linebackers had gotten up into the A gap. So he was trying to change the protection. And in trying to change the protection, it got within 5 seconds. So typically with the offensive line, you can't change the protection within 5 seconds, okay, because you have to change it. They have to get reset. And typically when you audible, the snap count is not on 1 because the team will start to recognize it and jump your snap count. So when you audible, most teams that it's on the second hut. So the process takes time. If Ben McAdoo, if he knew that, if he had the insight in knowing that this protection was fine and the center and the quarterback messed it up, he's given us insight that they could have run the play. And you have to, he knows more about their offense and what they're doing, regardless if we have a problem with what he said. To me, you have to coach up players. Now, if you guys don't like, do they call them out in the media and everything? Well, that is our business. It's the National Football League. Coaches do it different ways. Ben McAdoo was not wrong in what he said because it was a communication error between the center and the quarterback, and they were concerned about the blitz look that they were getting.
And it's also one of those things where you're assuming that if Eli's going up and he's going to change the protection and he's going to make those adjustments, he understands the process and how long it takes. And if at the end of the day he doesn't feel like he can get the play off, he's going to stop and take the timeout. He's trusting him to do that, and that didn't happen, and I think that's where the sloppy quarterback play comes in on the comment.
What's frustrating for me in this instance is we have seen repeatedly with this coach, Ben McAdoo, that these plays get in a few seconds later than we're seeing across the league. It's one of the reasons why from last year to this year, he pared down that giant, like ridiculously sized play sheet that he had because it was taking too long to get the play in. You tell me if this is unfair. In a situation like this, where you have 3rd and goal from the 10 they had it, if you know the pass play, you're not running where all the routes are going to the end zone. You know there's possibility that the ball is going to end up not a touchdown, not an incompletion, just short of the end zone, as it did. You need to know when you're calling that 3rd down play, if we get it to 4th and within what are we going for it? Are we kicking a field goal no matter what? Are we going for it on 4th if we're within 3 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard? That way, as soon as the play's over, you can send in what you're doing. You need to know on 4th down or on 3rd down what you're going to do on 4th down. The Giants didn't know that. So part of the reason that Eli was up against it, and I'm no big Eli Manning defender, but part of the reason they were up against it was because The Giants didn't know what they were doing beforehand. It took them too long to get the play in. That is on the head coach. I don't mind if Chris calls me out in a meeting after the show in front of the staff for something I screwed up. But if I screwed it up and Chris had part to do with me screwing it up, and then he's throwing me under the bus to everyone, that's going to aggravate me. That's the part of this that I think is unfair to Eli.
Well, I'm not sure how late the play came in, but this is one of the difficulties of being the offensive coordinator and the head coach. Or it could be one of the best things.
Yes.
Is he had to make a decision on third down as to what he wanted to do. And then as a head coach, he had decided to go for it. And then as a coordinator, he had to pick his plays. What I always believed in is that to have a core group of plays each week, there were got-to-have-it plays. You knew what you were going to run in that critical situation. You were going to practice that. And when it came down to it, the players knew exactly what you were going to run. So everybody was on the same page and moving forward quickly in the most critical moments.
Coach, can I ask all of you guys a question? You probably know this better than I do. If what you described isn't on that Olive Garden menu, what is? I thought what's on there is, hey, if we're third and goal and it's this much time left, we're doing this. So to make it actually easier when you go into a game, what else is on there besides all those plays in various situations so there is less thinking time?
This is what really happens, all right, in real time. All right, on third down, they've probably decided that they're going to go for it on fourth. But they don't know the measurement. And inside the 5-yard line is the hardest place to throw the football. Well, why? Spacing. All right? There's only 10 yards in the end zone. You only got 5 yards, or the 4-yard line. You only got 4 or 5 yards there. So you only have 15 yards. If they only rush 4, then they got 7 guys to defend this small space. So the number of plays that you can run, there's only a few of them. But if it's 4th and 6, the call is different than if it's 4th and 4. What type of defense did they have in? Did they go to a goal line? Now, I'm also talking to the headset to the people upstairs who can see the substitution. So all this is happening in real time. Third down happens. Now we have 4th and goal. Okay, we're going to go for it. On the call sheet, there are 5 calls, either 2-point plays, 4th down and short, that are on the call sheet. Myself, Brian Billick taught me this. Chris, remember them. And I used to memorize them because I had a couple quarterbacks, when the call came in, they were nervous and stuttering. And I'd be scat right, H dodge, on 2. And so I've seen that happen to younger quarterbacks before.
We weren't even going to take that chance in saying, hey, Chris, remember, we were going to define them during the week and practice them and made sure everybody knew if we get into this critical situation, this is what we are calling. This is our got-to-have-it play. And it used to frustrate me early on in my head coaching career. We'd practice the got-to-have-it plays. We'd get in the game. It'd be a critical situation. The offensive coordinator calls something different.
Yes.
And I said, what are you doing? Why do you think we practice this?
Now, also, one of the problems with the Giants, and I'll let you go, is...
doing?
Yeah. I never know what he's doing back there.
One of the biggest problems is when you don't have success, like the Giants have not had, like Ben McAdoo has been a successful offensive coordinator. He can formulate first personnel, groupings, and attack defenses a certain way. He's been successful. But now, you're at a critical juncture. He don't have a whole bunch. You know why? He can't protect. He can't run the ball. So I don't care how big the sheet is. None of them plays are good if guys don't make plays. So he's got a problem. And that's how you can run out of time in real time in the red zone.
And what you're discussing quickly is that's the benefit to being the offensive coordinator and the head coach that you didn't have. Like, you don't have to worry about some guy in a booth not going with your got-to-have-it play. The downside is you got a lot going on. And Ben McAdoo at the end of the first half yesterday totally butchered an obvious timeout situation, likely because too much, like, it's a lot of responsibilities. These are big, full-time, highly paid jobs separately. When you combine them, it's a really rough spot.
And you're adding to the fact that you've got a veteran quarterback and you want to put a lot of faith and trust in him as well. So there's a ton of moving parts going on in a critical situation, and you want to take as much thinking out of that as you can.
So Ezekiel Elliott has taken a ton of heat for his lack of effort in the Cowboys' blowout loss against Denver. And if getting crushed by the media and the fans wasn't bad enough, now head coach Jason Garrett is piling on.
Well, one of the things is the foundation of our football team is fight. We're going to compete and fight, scratch and claw. That's what we're going to be. And that's one of the reasons we love Zeke Elliott. That's what he is. Watch him play. He competes. He battles. And again, those plays were uncharacteristic of him. So we'll certainly address it with him. But we have to address that with our entire team. That's not the way we play.
Coach Eric Mangini is back with us. Coach, does Ezekiel Elliott deserve all the blame for that play that he took off?
That's pretty tepid criticism, isn't it? That's hardly calling anybody
that's
out.
Wrenching right
It
there.
was like
what I'm saying.
No, it was like a compliment sandwich. It was.
Wait, Coach. What was
It was a compliment sandwich.
Hashtag compliment sandwich. I love
Where
it.
you tell him how, look, he's such a great competitor. He's so good. That's why we love him. He could have really done a better job with that. But we're also going to talk to the whole team. It's like nice, little tiny bit of, we didn't like that. And then nice.
That's the J-Lo, the interview. Compliment, question.
It's definitely, yeah.
Anyway, you all look super great today, and you're very handsome. And we're back after this. I get the compliment question.
That's we were talking about McAdoo earlier about doing it to the media. In this instance, when it is the topic of the day, fair or not, like that was one of the big things. We talked about it. They were talking about in Dallas. I actually think Jason Garrett did Zeke a service there, not a disservice, because of the way he handled it. Because he went out of his way to do what you're saying, which is, listen, we saw it, not okay, but it's not who he is. My concern with it yesterday, and my concern still remains today, and I just want to know where you're at on it, is as a coach, would it worry you more that this is something we've never seen from this guy, and it happened while he was having a game we've never seen from him? Would it worry you that, okay, we've always gotten this super high level at all times Ezekiel Elliott, but we've also always had productive Ezekiel Elliott? And in games where he's not as productive, which we hadn't seen, where he's not getting the ball as much, which we hadn't seen, are we going to get a different guy? That was my only real level of concern about this yesterday.
Well, yeah, I definitely have that concern. And going into the second year, it's Dak and it's Zeke, and it's all young players. You don't really know who they are. You're still learning about these guys. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen a situation where Zeke's been unproductive, where the Cowboys have had that kind of game. How are they going to deal with adversity? And in terms of calling out players, ideally you do everything in the meeting room. That's what you want. But in a situation like
this... Say that a little slower. Can you
wait. Look, ideally you do everything in the meeting room, and you want to keep things in-house. But in a situation like this where it's you can't move away from the question. You've got to address the question. It's a young player. I know he's an emerging star. It's important for him to understand this is not okay. And it's important to send the message collectively, this is not okay. Now, you can address it in a lot harsher terms in the meeting, but that is not okay. And everybody's got to know it.
Coach, for one, I mean, we have spent most of our adult lives in these locker rooms and in these meeting rooms. And the versions that we have seen from Jason Garrett and Ben McAdoo, these are tame versions of the conversations that really happen between the coaches and the players.
Tell us. Give me some insight what it's really like.
Yeah, and you're being nice with the word tame.
No, I'd love to know.
Harsher. It's even a harsher word than that.
I remember one time in Philadelphia earlier in my career, the late Dale Hopp, great defensive line coach for Buddy Ryan, helped invent the 46 defense. There became a discussion about a player's grade after the game. And then the discussion got more heated. Reggie White, Seth Joyner, Clyde Simmons, Jerome Brown, and the next thing I know, the divider falls down. And we got 6 guys fighting the day after we won. The day after we won.
What do you mean fighting? Like fighting?
Fighting with the coach because of what the coach had said to him. So, I mean, my mom has not talked to me as bad as NFL coaches have. My college coaches, the way they charge me. My high school coach, almost every coach at every level has been in your face, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to hear, not when you want to hear it. Now, there's a business called the NFL, so the coaches, they clean it up a little bit. But in private, I mean, you free game. Any player that I've ever played with, they've been free game. So to see coaches being criticized because, you know something, they could have said something a little bit easier. Man, their livelihoods are at stake. There's only 16 games. Every game is either pass or fail. There ain't no incomplete. And you only have so many games. So now we're just going to criticize coaches based on every little word. Oh, he went at him too soft. Oh, he went at him too hard. All right? This game is supposed to be taught a certain way.
If it was, then the coach would get out there and say, you know what? Eric Flowers didn't do his job. That was terrible. You know what else? Hey, Brandon Marshall should have caught that. That was terrible. And you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have brought him over here. Like, it would just be vomitosis of
They didn't ask him that question. They asked him about the sequence when they were in the red zone, and he answered it. When you have a veteran center, and especially the experience we have at quarterback, the play should get run.
Well, so that's if people just joining us, that's from the Eli Manning discussion, that not the Zeke Elliott and Jason Garrett discussion.
But we're talking about how
general,
a coach responds.
I just wanted to make sure people understood the context of it. The one issue that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that I think some coaches have is players learn early on. Are you, I guess to use a cliche, a player's coach, more of an old school hard-nosed coach, and are you the way I understand, it is very difficult for a coach to transition, to start off as your buddy coach, and then all of a sudden be the harder coach, pardon me. Jason Garrett has never been considered one of the hardline guys. So does he have, in your experience, would you believe the credibility in the locker room to do what you guys are discussing, which is to really go at somebody? Or does he have to do it in a gentler way because that's the coach he's been for most of his tenure in Dallas?
Well, that was a pretty gentle way to go
I know,
at someone.
But in the locker room, I'm saying.
In the locker room, you have to be whoever you are. And do I think that it's hard to go from being everybody's friend, hanging out, and then suddenly taking a hard line? It's the same thing with parenting. You've got to set a tone. You've got to set the things that you believe in, and it's much easier to go from a hard line and soften than it is to go from a softer line and then suddenly try to get hard. Because all the players in the locker room say, well, wait a second. That personality was fine when we were winning. That personality was fine for a long time, and now suddenly it's not good enough? It's not authentic.
And you're not going to be able to understand the personality of an NFL coach by watching the press conference. And I'm going to give you the best example of it is Bill Belichick. All right? You will not meet a more funny person, a more engaging person, but he does his stick for the media, all right? But off camera, he's totally a different person, all right? Who Eric Mangini was as a coach, you don't even know it. Ask the former players, all right? Because I've talked to him, and I've worked with Coach for a while, so I know that. He's a different person than the person that speaks on television.
It's been a minute since we've talked the NBA. Kyrie Irving opened up in a way few pro athletes ever do in a revealing interview on Monday. In a sit-down with ESPN, Irving admits he didn't speak to LeBron when he asked for a trade from Cleveland, saying, quote, "Why would I have to?" Here's more now from Kyrie Irving.
I don't think that you owe anything to another person in terms of figuring out what you want to do with your life. And it's not anything personal. I'm not here to tirade anybody. I'm not here to go at any particular person or the organization because I have nothing but love for Cleveland.
So, Nick, they want me to ask you if you have a problem with these comments. And yet, I guess my question is, how big of a problem do you have with these comments?
What he said, this went on for about 18 minutes. And you cannot find a 40-second clip that doesn't have a head-scratching moment. There's the clip we played where he says, in life, you don't owe anything to anyone. That's not how life works. Like, that's just not how human societies work.
Right. So,
like, literally.
So you've gotten to this spot in your life with no assistance.
Well, that obviously not. And it's, I mean, literally since we evolved from hunter-gatherer tribes to greater societal groups, like, it is an interpersonal relationship that helps you grow. So that doesn't make sense. Kyrie, the quote we didn't play, but that you read, where he was asked why he didn't tell LeBron, and his response is, why would I have to? Kyrie talks a lot in this interview about being a grown-up, evolving into the man he wants to be. And you know how much I like Kyrie Irving. I have a 19-year-old son. One of the biggest indicators of transitioning from childhood or youth to grown-up adulthood is when you realize life is not about what you have to do as often as it is about what you should do. No, Kyrie Irving does not have to say anything to LeBron James. And if I decided tomorrow to quit this television show to go become a professional poker player, I wouldn't have to tell either one of you guys. But it would be the wrong thing to do not to. And when Kyrie in the interview says, Stephen A. asks him, you know people are going to think that this is a shot or that this shows something, that LeBron's going to take this a certain way. Kyrie says, yeah. And then he's asked, do you care? And he says, no. That is not who Kyrie has represented himself and who he has represented that relationship to be. So the entire thing was puzzling. I don't know why Kyrie did the interview because he didn't seem interested in actually answering the questions. And I have no better insight on why he wanted out of Cleveland today than I did yesterday.
Cece, my question to you, as someone who's been in the spotlight and who's been asked a million different times, a million different ways by a million different reporters, and part of your job is either to answer questions you want to answer or not questions, and you've probably got really good, especially at the end of your career, at deflecting things you didn't want to talk about. This was a topic that, for as much as we wanted to hear what he said, I can't understand why he would do it. Why now? Why the way he did it? The fashion he did it? The lackluster effort he did it in? The lackluster energy he used to do it? Explain to me, could you try to even step into his shoes for a second to figure out why the timing was that he felt he needed to say what he needed to say when he needed to say it?
Well, first things first, he has the right to be able to decide what's the best move for his career. He might have had some type of indicator that from Cleveland, LeBron might not be there, or some other reason. The owner, other people in the organization, he might not have had the support. So he has that right. He forced a trade. He's in Boston now. Now, he says that in some other interviews and everything, he wants to play in the pick and roll. He wants to become more of a complete player. Okay, you have that right. Now, I remember when we drafted Randy Moss. Randy Moss called me on the phone draft day. Said, I've heard that you're one of the best ever, and I want you to mentor me. I want you to help me out. I said, okay, no problem. So he called your agent. I want you to buy a house or a condo in Boca Raton. You have to move here because that's where we train. And once you do that, I'll get you to the next step. The next week, his agent, they had processed it. Randy was in South Florida. He was, anything you tell me to do, I'll do it. And to me, that's a lot like Kyrie was when LeBron decided to come back. All right? Because Kyrie was not the player he is today that he was 3 years ago when LeBron came back. So LeBron helped him develop on and off the field. I know people who know Kyrie, and he has gone through stretches of his life where he's been very, very immature. And LeBron, besides his dad, has been one of the most influential people in seeing him develop on and off the court.
So how do you not tell him once you make the decision?
Sometimes, and I think Randy and I went through the same thing. Randy developed a resentment towards the questioning of, well, Coach Green and Chris Carter, they help you, they do this. Not all the questions. A lot of the questions had to do with us helping him be successful. Randy got tired of it and was like, listen, at some point I need to get credit for my own work. Now, I was getting closer to retirement, and I was getting ready to move on. And at one point, Randy felt like it was best for him to take over the team, him and Dante Culpepper. I totally understood that. I retired, got a television job, ended up playing another half a year in Miami. That's another story. But he decided at that point in his career, that's what he wanted to do. Now, Randy and I are mature enough that we're still friends to this day. But there was some tension there because he decided at that point he didn't want me to mentor him anymore. But I understood. But Randy told me All right? And he told me what he wanted to do.
That's the part of this that, because you said in the beginning, Kyrie has the right. Of course he has the right.
Yes.
No one is denying he has the right. The question now is why he did it, why he wanted to execute that right, and why he went about it the way he did. And he also said in this interview, he had been wanting out of Cleveland well before the offseason. He said that he felt as a professional, he didn't want, and good for him, he didn't want it to distract from the season, so he kept it in. But he knew for a while he wanted out.
See, to me, he's very disingenuous throughout the interview. Now, so you're saying after they won, after he hits the shot.
That's what he's saying.
Between that date and yesterday, or the end of the finals. Let's go to the end of the finals. There was times in there that he didn't want to be in Cleveland.
But that's what makes it more disingenuous is, and this is one of the downsides, I guess, of being a pro athlete, is we have all this video of him, play the video during the Eastern Conference Finals, May of this year, when he, according to his own words, already wants out. Here's what he says about LeBron.
When you get to that level of trust, and you allow him to, or you allow someone to come into, a friendship that extends well off the court, and you understand how great this era can be if we are selfless to the point where we don't think about anything else except for the greatness of our team and what we can accomplish.
Nick, what does he get from not talking to LeBron? What does he gain from not saying anything?
You said in the beginning it was petty. Of course it's petty. It's petty, juvenile, and childish. And it also, at some point he's lying. Either yesterday, when he's saying he knew he wanted out during the season, or at that podium. That was during the Eastern Conference Finals. Oh, well, maybe it was what happened during the finals, losing 4 out of 5 to Golden State. Well, here's Kyrie, the day they lost the finals, after the last game. Here's what he says about LeBron.
You stand your ground, too, with a leader like that. You don't want to take a step back. You move to the front line with a guy like that, and you want to bring your game up to another level. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, because I know that if we continue to be with one another and keep utilizing one another, man, the sky is the limit.
There's a narrative out there that what happened was Kyrie heard LeBron wanted him traded. I've never believed that, and Kyrie dispelled it yesterday when he said he was feeling this way before the playoffs even started. We know how he says he felt during the Eastern Conference Finals and right after the finals. Like right now, if you were to tell me there's 2 Kyries, one with a beard and one without a beard, with 2 different personalities, that makes as much sense as anything I can think of.
Does he become the NBA's villain now? Or right now, in your mind, is Kevin Durant still holding that spot?
Oh, I think it's Durant. I think he becomes, but I think people are very interested in watching LeBron and the Cavs play him.
Yes, I just think people look at Kyrie just a little bit different.
And it doesn't make sense from so many perspectives. It doesn't make sense.
Kevin Durant made a splash on Twitter yesterday as it appears that he used fake accounts to get into arguments with strangers online. Nick, the story is confusing enough as it is. No one can explain it better than you, so...
Okay, so we saw late the night before last someone tweet to Kevin Durant criticizing his move to Golden State. Then Kevin Durant's Twitter account replied twice in third person, referring to Durant as he and him, defending Russ, but taking shots at his other former Thunder teammates and taking a shot at Billy Donovan. Those tweets were then erased. Then the great people of NBA Twitter discovered Kevin Durant almost assuredly has a secret Instagram account that his brother interacts with at times, and there's the tweets right there. He didn't like the organization playing for Billy Donovan. His roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. That's a weird thing to say if you were actually Kevin Durant. The other tweet was, imagine taking Russ off that team, see how bad they were. KD can't win a championship with those cats. We then discovered he almost assuredly has a secret or a private Instagram that he argues with strangers about Kevin Durant on. We also know he just released some shoes that have on the insoles inscribed anonymous internet comments. So,
Nick, bottom line it. Can you just bottom line it?
Bottom line is Kevin Durant is creating egg avatar Twitter accounts to argue with anonymous 17-year-olds on Twitter, and I love it so much.
Why?
I'm so happy that this is...
What is he doing?
What's going on with these NBA players? Maybe it should be they didn't go to college long enough. I mean, their overall social skills. Now, Nick, I need help with social media.
Yeah?
Now, I got you helping me out. I got Angela, who runs all of our social here, helping me out. Like, this to me is just so childish. All right?
Yeah,
like,
of course it's
is it this generation, or is it something with the NBA players that are different than the other professional
Why are we going macro? Why are we going big picture, making it about a whole league or a whole generation? Let's make this about Kevin Durant. Let's just make
we just had a sensational interview with Kyrie Irving being disingenuous.
Listen, it is one thing to do a bad interview. It is another thing to fresh off your finals MVP, the best season of your life, theoretically, to decide I am going to go through the process of creating fake, secret Twitter accounts to argue with people on the internet. Now, listen, I'm not above arguing with some strangers online, but I will do it
as
Nick Wright.
Right.
KD seems to...
How much money you think KD got right now?
$322 million. You asked me a question, I answered it. Was that more precise than you had expected?
No, it just seems like a man is... Well, I also see another rich guy arguing with people on Twitter, too.
Okay,
but that's
listen. Kevin Durant, I think, mistakenly thought when he went to Golden State, okay, all we got to do is win, and I got to play great, and the criticism will go away.
No, everyone will like me. That's what it seems like to me. KD wants to be liked.
But he's literally going at it in the worst possible way. First, I thought maybe he wanted to change his image up, unpolish it a little bit, a little bit more of a little Dennis Rodman-esque, a little bad boy.
A little dirty.
Then I think he literally just doesn't know what he's doing. He's going the opposite way. So now he's hiding that account. I can't tell if they want me to like him or not like him. It literally has confused me.
I don't know that he knows the best way to go about it because, now listen, I understand some people are like, listen, this was obviously his social media manager who had the access to the account, who sent the tweets. That would be 99% of NBA stars. If this story came out, I would think, okay, someone was tweeting from their account.
Right.
But here is the corroborating evidence. Piece one, Kevin Durant is known on his actual account to argue with random strangers, to argue with people defending himself. Kevin Durant is known to release signature sneakers with internet comments on them. We have overwhelming evidence that Kevin Durant has a private Instagram account with which he's used to argue with internet strangers. So my only question is this, KD, let's argue. Like, please, KD, I'd love to do it on the show, but we can definitely do it on the internet. Like, I'm Nick Wright. Like, I'm not Kevin Durant.
But that's my question.
I'm allowed to do this.
If you had to, before we move on, if you had to come up with a fake Twitter, Instagram name or whatever it is, I have to know just what it would be.
Chris Carter 80.
Okay, just making sure. That's what I thought, and I just wasn't sure if...
Yeah, he's sending out some tweets.
That's what I'd go with.
Using his money, his son, and now his Twitter
he passes
account.
me the phone before I press send.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. For Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolf. So long, everybody. Welcome to a Monday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you think. Leave us a review. Time to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. We're going to start in Denver right now, where the Broncos hosted the Cowboys, and the Cowboys hosted a whole bunch of issues on offense. Ezekiel Elliott was basically a no-show, only gaining 8 yards on 9 carries. Dak Prescott came back down to earth, throwing for 238 yards with 2 picks. After it was all said and done, Prescott was quick to accept responsibility for the loss.
If I make more plays, we give ourselves a chance in that game, and I just simply didn't make the plays. There's no excuse for it. And playing like that, you won't win a game, doesn't matter who you play.
I do not think this is a picture of what our team is at all, and won't accept that.
All right, so Nick, I'll start with you. Is Dak Prescott good enough to win when Zeke Elliott struggles?
Of course he's good enough. We didn't have a precedent for this because this was Zeke's first bad game since the first game of he and Dak's career, week 1 of last season. Since then, Zeke has been nothing but productive. But yes, Dak is good enough to win without a running game. He wasn't yesterday. Yesterday he was bad. Yesterday they were playing an outstanding defense, a Broncos defense that sure looked like the Broncos defense that was good enough to get them to a couple of Super Bowls. But Dak has been nothing but excellent since he set foot in the NFL 19 games ago. And we keep doing this thing where we are so tied to the fact that Dak was not a high draft pick, that Connor Cook and Paxton Lynch and all these guys that are not, and Christian Hackenberg were taken in front of him, that we are looking for reasons. Our friend Troy Aikman during the game opined about whether or not, this is where the Cowboys missed Tony Romo. Dak Prescott is better than Tony Romo was. Dak Prescott is still, despite yesterday, in the midst of the best start to a career of any quarterback ever, and yet people are going to pin this loss on him because it was the first time we've seen him be bad in quite some time.
Quarterbacks of the National Football League, it's consistent. They get too much credit when the teams are going well and the offenses are moving or the teams are winning. And when everything else goes wrong, it's easy to blame the quarterback. So when things aren't well, then let's blame the quarterback. But I believe we can examine Dallas and stop trying to separate the success of Zeke and the success of Dak. They run hand in hand. Now, you said that Zeke had a bad game. Zeke didn't have a bad game. He didn't even have the chance to have a good game. The offensive line had a bad game. So the ability for the team to function, and that's what makes Dallas team offensively special, is that offensive line. If they're not doing their job, Zeke can't run the way he wants to, which also leaves the defense on the field that you can take advantage of their secondary, which I believe is subpar, which also, if their passing game, which wasn't, because they had 6, 7 guys in the box, their passing game was not dominant. So the question to me would be, wow, when they can't run the ball, can Dallas have a dominant passing game? And that, to me, is the biggest question about their offense. If you commit a bunch of people to the line of scrimmage, can they beat you? Can Witten, can Dez Bryant, can Cole Beasley, can these guys effectively, with Dak, beat you in the passing game? Now, going against Denver, Denver still has the advantage in the running game and the passing game because they have personnel not like most defenses have. So it's like a copycat league. Well, why won't other teams do what Denver did? They don't have 2 all-pro corners. They don't have a first-round draft pick that they use as their nickelback, Roby from Ohio State. He was on Dez one-on-one a bunch of times. So they have very, very unique personnel. Playing in Denver, as I told you guys all last week, would be a difficult task for Dallas. So you can place the blame all the way around. It's not on Dak. Can he carry it? This offensive line, they had a bad game, which didn't allow Zeke to be able to get off. He touches the ball the few number of times he did, not a run over 10 yards. Like, how are you going to win? So it's easy. Okay, let's look at Dak, but Witten's got to play better. Dez Bryant in one-on-one coverage, something we talked about all last week. If you're an elite player, you have to win those battles. You have to have a dominant game. When they target you, the number of times that they targeted Dez, you expect bigger results.
16 targets, and he got manhandled.
So let's spread the blame all the way around to Dallas, especially, and you got to start with that offensive line.
Nick, does Denver come in saying, hey, you know what? If we just attack the offensive line, if we just stop Ezekiel Elliott, if we just hold that run game back, we'll win this game? I mean, was that their plan all along?
It appears that was their plan, and that they trusted that those all-pro corners could win their matchups. There's not many teams in the league that can say, we're just going to trust both our corners, in some cases all 3 of our corners, that they're just going to be better than you. And the game got away from Dallas early. Zeke didn't just have a bad game. He had, I would guess, the worst football game of his life, not his professional career. Do you think Zeke, in his whole life, do you think he's ever had a game where he had more carries than yards?
Probably not.
9 carries for 8 yards. And Zeke compounded the error by giving up on a play when the game was still in the balance. And we can show it. On Dak's first interception, Zeke is the closest player to the ball. Watch this. And Zeke just stops, and they'll show it again from another angle. Zeke puts his hands on his hips, stops, and when he cuts back, when Chris Harris cuts back, that's where, watch Zeke here. Sees it, I'm done with this play. You can't do that. You can't do that. Forget all the controversy surrounding Ezekiel Elliott. You are one of the best athletes on the field. You are one of the youngest players on the field. As many interceptions do, this one cuts back the other way. If you're pursuing that play, one of your offensive linemen doesn't have to make that tackle. Maybe you can go and do the Maurice Claret from the Fiesta Bowl and force a fumble. You don't know what happens there. You can't give up on a play like that.
You can also get knocked out. Now, I played with the guy, Randy Moss, and there was a number of plays just like that where he would get criticized. And people are like, oh, he's not playing hard. Well, let's go back to Zeke when he came into the NFL. What was the scouting report? The scouting report was he's one of the best three-down backs. He's even better without the ball than he is with the ball because he blocks, he picks up blitzes. That's his MO. So now we've watched him play a whole season and 2 games. And now we got one play out of those hundreds of plays that we've seen him play that we're going to say, okay, yeah, that happens all the time. It's just that we're pointing him out. I see this week in and week out.
And I've been
no, it doesn't make it, but it's part of the game. Also, when you chase a guy like that, you can also get blindsided because when they get an interception defensively, they are trying to hurt people. I.e. Warren Sapp, when he knocked the guy out for Green Bay. Like, we also are conditioned as players.
All those other guys on Dallas were just as susceptible to injury, and they all chased after the play. I'm not arguing that this undercuts who Zeke is as a player. I'm not arguing this defines him as a player. What I am saying is it's a bad look when you are personally having the worst game maybe of your life, certainly as a pro, and you compound it by giving up on a play when the game's still in the balance.
I've seen this happen too many times, and I just don't believe people are fair. It's not a matter, is it right or is it wrong? It happens. It happens in the NBA, happens in Major League Baseball, and it happens in the NFL. Yes, he gave up on the play, but also he didn't want to get hit, all right? Because if you chase a guy, them other 10 defenders, all right, there's one with the ball. They're all, now you can be blocked. If you give yourself up, they won't block you. So is it a play that I encourage? No, but I see guys do it all the time, and it's called protect your career.
But if all of them did the same thing, he's got a free path to the end zone.
But
if all of them had the same rationale.
Listen, it's part of the game. There's a bunch of bad plays. That did not cause Dallas to lose.
I know it didn't cause Dallas to lose. Let me just ask you this, because I know we're up against it. If you're in the film room, you're the veteran leader on the team, and you see that, what are you saying to Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm going to be very careful because I've seen too many guys get blindsided. I've seen too many guys get their ACL blown out chasing after people, all right? Be a pro, but also be smart, all right? You have to be smart.
I think there is a big gulf between being smart and where he was. I think he could have given more effort and still protected himself.
I'm just going to tell you something. When you see that ball intercepted, given the way the game was going, your state of mind right there could be, you know something, I seen it bounce, I'm going to let that play go on. And that's exactly what he did. Now, is that a crime? No, it's not. No, it's not. But I've seen players do it all the time. It's not a matter of making excuses. This happens all the time. Say, do players take plays off? Absolutely, they take plays off.
Will he be spoken to about this? Will anyone say anything to him?
No.
Okay.
No, because it had nothing to do with the game.
Jason Garrett won't say anything to him. It's just they move on from something like this.
What's he going to tell him? Hey, Zeke, I want you to chase a guy from behind.
I want you to give up on the whistleblower.
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Chris, I know we're late, so maybe we can't show it right now, but when that interception happens, because the wide receiver's momentum's taking him the other way, he's the guy who has the best chance to make that play.
They had 60 plays offensively.
I get it. I know that play wasn't the biggest play of the game, but it was indicative of a bigger problem. This morning, everyone's going to be crushing Dak, because people are looking for reasons why Dak isn't great. And this morning, everyone's going to be saying, see, as soon as Zeke has a bad game, Dak turns into a pumpkin. And I'm trying to add a little context to that. But I know we're going to talk about this all day long. So.
Continuing on First Things First, Daryl Johnston in studio with us. Last week, the sports world was discussing the downfall of Tom Brady. He was done. Remember, he was finished.
Right?
That didn't last long.
I'm not going to take this.
New England dominated the Saints 36-20. Brady threw for 3 touchdowns. He had over 400 yards. Gronk had 116 yards and a touchdown, but he left in the third quarter with a groin. Just like saying it sort of inside. Moose, you convinced the Patriots are back after blowing out New Orleans. And not back all the way, just back to the Patriots that we've been talking about in the last couple of years.
Well, a perfect setup, right? You guys made great points. You know, playing Thursday night, New Orleans has got to play Monday. Terrible defense over the last 4 or 5 years. So if you want to get healthy, you couldn't have put a better scenario up for him. Did you really count Tom Brady out last week?
I see these guys, they're misrepresenting me.
Done.
This is what I didn't count out. I never came out of my mouth.
Worst human ever, I think you said.
That was in the production meeting. You didn't actually say that on TV. But I like to bring the people behind the scenes.
Just tell me when the lies are over.
Okay.
All I did was I had the audacity to say we have, in this great 98-year history of this sport, we have no precedent for a quarterback starting a season as old as Brady is and being good that year. There's no precedent for it.
But we've never had a Brady before.
Okay, so that I agree with that. But so even if Brady breaks the mold, going 10-6 would be breaking the mold. Being the third guy selected to the Pro Bowl would be breaking the mold. Everyone went into the season saying that the Pats were the biggest favorite to win a Super Bowl since the Pats after the undefeated season. Like, they were overwhelming favorites in their conference and in the league, and I, before the Chiefs game, was pumping the brakes on it. Then the Chiefs game happens. I'm like, some questions here.
The Chiefs have been waiting for that game for 2 years. So I was not surprised at the outcome. I was surprised by Kareem Hunt, some of the things that we saw within that game. But that was a game that they'd had marked for a while. They wanted a shot from that playoff loss a couple of years ago that they felt they really let one get away from them. So that doesn't surprise me. And this organization, we saw it the last time. They said it was Kansas City who did this to them a couple of years ago.
Monday night.
So maybe that's just not their matchup. Maybe that's Dallas's Denver. Maybe they just don't match up well against them. But Tom is just, they win with Corey Dillon in a defense. They win with Randy on the outside and Wes in the slot. They win with double tight ends. They brought the double tight end. Whatever they have at their disposal, they will find a way to win. And even with all these guys hurt, I don't know if anything ever slows these guys down.
Right. I wouldn't be concerned about Tom. I'll be concerned about the timing between the wide receivers. They dressed only 3 guys yesterday for the game. Hogan got banged up in the game. How would they utilize the trade of Philip Dorsett coming over? He had a couple catches in the game, but another small guy, like where are you going to play him? You're going to play him in the slot? Who's going to play outside on a regular basis? Can they have a sustained running game to be able to help that defense and their linebacking core? If you get them in man-to-man coverage, you can take advantage of that. So there are things to worry about in New England, but I don't believe Tom Brady is part of that concern. One
of the big concerns they'll now have is Rob Gronkowski and what happens to him. And I think they thought that once he had all that time off and he was rested that he was going to come back full tilt. But now he leaves with a groin injury. And that's one of those nagging injuries, isn't it? I mean, do you ever come back full in the season from that, or is that going to be a week-to-week thing? Well, most skilled guys, if you think about soft tissue injuries in the first month of the season, it's either one or two things. It's either a hamstring or a groin. And those things come with, you can't simulate running through tackles. You can't simulate your cleats being in the ground and people pulling at your legs. So you get a lot of these things early in the season. With Gronk, it's just a ticking time. Is he going to make it through the whole year? He's had a lot of injuries, but a groin I'm not necessarily concerned about. Anything to do with Gronk's arms, forearms, or back. Those are the things. He came into the league with a back problem. So those are the things I would worry about. I wouldn't worry about soft tissue, especially on a skilled guy early in the season. Agreed. But, he is carrying a lot. So, and the thing with him, he's one of those guys, too, that it's not so much the production as it is the emotion, the intangibles that he brings. I just think they miss something when he's not in the lineup. And that's another void that they have to fill. And there's nobody with his personality on that team. Well, and there was a couple interesting moments yesterday because records were broken, right? So Jason Witten got 1,100 and who did he pass in catches? It was Chris Carter. But he had 1,102 catches yesterday, so they show that list.
They also then Antonio Gates.
He has 65 touchdowns, too.
Okay, all right.
That's half the number I have.
Okay,
Go
all right.
ahead.
Chill.
But he's not counting.
No, I'm not the numbers guy. I'm sorry.
And
but 130, 65.
Okay, exactly half. You're right. We know if you add Witten and Michael Irvin's career touchdowns together, they equal Chris Carter's. That's great. That's awesome. That's why you're in the Hall of Fame. But they also showed Antonio Gates. He tied for the career touchdowns Tony Gonzalez, or passed Tony Gonzalez. And one thing that I found interesting was how short of a list of tight ends with these monster numbers are, because that's a hard position to play at a super high level for a long time. We were talking during the break about Jay Novacek, who was with you guys during your guys' run, but that position, because when you do catch passes, it's usually over the middle and you're getting crushed. Blocking is hard on your body. You know that better than just about anyone in the world. It's hard for a lot of tight ends. The flame burns very bright, then burns out. I mean, dated reference, but Jeremy Shockey looked like, oh my God, he's going to change the position. And his career then was gone. Kellen Winslow Jr., oh my God. And then his career. So with Gronk, we have seen, what's the last year Gronk was fully healthy the whole year? Yeah. I can't remember. So that, to me, is a real concern. Whether or not Gronk, when you don't have Edelman anymore, whether or not Gronk can stay on the field and you can count on him to stay on the field.
And I think one of the things people don't realize with Gronk, he's one of the best end-of-the-line blockers in the NFL. Oh, yeah. Like, we know he's one of the best pass catchers. We know he's so reliable coming across that deep dig across the middle that him and Tom like so much. But his ability to give them a huge advantage in the running game when they don't have him in there, or his back is not stable, those are things that, as the season goes on, those are things in New England that you must continue to watch.
So, Moose, explain it to me, because I've asked the same question 4 different times, and I just don't know if I'm happy with the answer. How does a team with a 40-year-old quarterback, a very shaky defense right now, a tight end who's always questionable, Edelman's out for the year, Amendola's got his concussion, there's Hogan's, like a whole list of injuries. How does a team like that go on to win 12, 13 games and, who knows, maybe end up wherever they end up?
They all trust the process that Coach Belichick puts them through. He never deviates from it. So the consistency that he has, regardless of the situations or circumstances surrounding that team, is always the same. And we see one side of it from the media when you see the post-game press conferences and the very curt responses to the media.
Well,
but you talk to people that are inside, that they all buy into it. They all understand it. You wouldn't see people at the end of their career going to that place for an opportunity to win a Super Bowl if they didn't have the belief that every year they have a viable option to win this. Chris Long, Randy Moss. I mean, the list is long of the people that go there to get one shot, and they think that that's their best opportunity.
We continue with the NFC Championship rematch, Packers and Falcons, and once again, the Falcons jumped out to a huge lead and held on for the win. Can't blame Aaron Rodgers. Threw for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what he had to say after the game.
This is, potential matchup down the line. Hopefully, we put ourselves in that position. But, it's a tough game. They're a fantastic team, very well coached, MVP quarterback. But a game we're in it. I gave him a 7 on the fumble, gave him another 7 on the pick. We lose by 11, so.
Moose, was this just a bad game for the Green Bay Packers, or is this a sign that there are bigger problems on this team moving forward?
I just think it's a tough matchup with Atlanta in that dome. They're built a specific way. It was interesting. We talked to Ron Rivera a couple of years ago, and he doesn't like New Orleans in New Orleans, and he doesn't like Atlanta in Atlanta because Carolina's built to be outside on the grass. You look at Green Bay, I don't know if they're built like Carolina is, but when you go into those facilities, you go in against those types of teams that are built that way with speed, on the offense, on the defense, special teams, everything. So when Atlanta or New Orleans back in the day gets on that roll in that environment, in that setting, it is tough to stop them. And so that's why I think you see when Atlanta's moving and firing on all cylinders, they'll jump out on you 31-7 real quick. But I like what Aaron Rodgers did. He kept it all in perspective. Listen, hey, hopefully we're going to get a chance to see him again later in the season, which means playoffs. It's similar to what he did with the Relax a couple of years ago. He keeps everything in perspective. It's difficult to win a game on a Sunday afternoon in the NFL every week.
And he does what a lot of players and coaches want you to do in answering the questions. He didn't refer to any other players. He didn't pass the blame. He's like, man, I had 2 bad plays. If I don't make those plays, we lose by 11, we're in the game. So I do like the answer. The obvious thing was don't make excuses. When you start the game, and it's an NFC Championship rematch, Your left tackle, he's inactive. Your right tackle is inactive. Now, we've struggled running the ball. Now, the thing you mentioned before, going into a place like Atlanta, Green Bay is not a real fast, athletic football team, all right? They play in Lambeau Field. The grass is a little higher, all right? So your characteristics for which you develop, they're a little bit different around your football team. Daniels, the nose tackle, he's out of the game. I mean, he wreaked havoc in the Seattle game. I think in watching Green Bay in week number 2, we still had one eye on week number 1 and watched and saw how good they looked against Seattle and how poorly they looked in week number 2. But I wasn't expecting a great effort, especially out of that offense with their 2 offensive linemen deactivated before the game.
I have a high level of concern for Green Bay, and maybe this is my own confirmation bias. It might be because this confirmed my worry about them headed into the season. The Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010. That was the last year they had a defense in the top 10 in either scoring or total yards. Every year since then, they have 0 years have they had a top 10 defense. Most years it's been a bottom 10 defense. And last year, what did we see in the NFC Championship game? The defense just couldn't match up with Atlanta. Week 1, I'm like, oh, I think Seattle's going to be pretty damn good. Mike Daniels and Green Bay, they really imposed their will. Maybe the defense now can be just good enough. Now, I know Mike Daniels didn't play in this game or got injured in this game. But this looked to me like the same old Packers defense, where the plan is, hey, Aaron, if you can score 35, we got it. If not, it's going to be a struggle. And that's so frustrating for me because the Packers, I believe, have the best player in football, one of the best, most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. And it seems to me since the year after they won the Super Bowl, and they were 15-1, since then they've been complacent. They won't participate in free agency. Like, we can name the notable Green Bay free agents in the last decade off one hand. It's Julius Peppers. It's Martellus Bennett this year. Charles Woodson at one point. Like, I mean, that's the list. They don't go out and participate in free agency, and they just rely on Aaron Rodgers. And last night I saw a team that ran it back from the NFC Championship game and somehow was surprised with the results. In the NFC Championship game, you were down 31-7 early in third quarter. Last night, you were down 31-7 early in third quarter. I wonder why. Because it's the same 2 teams.
I think the other part is the offensive line. I think you make a great point with the tackles. When Green Bay has also struggled, and they don't participate in free agency. They haven't added any big defensive stars. They have always relied on the quarterback to win games, going back to Favre.
Yes.
I remember talking with Favre one time. He goes, there's so much pressure. I feel it. He had a season with a ton of interceptions. He goes, but every time I go out on the field, I feel like I have to have points. I have to get at least 3 because I know the defense is not going to be able to hold them. So that dynamic has been in Green Bay for a long time. But I think the other thing you have to look at, when that offensive line, when that starting 5 can stay together all season, they're also a different team. And to have both tackles out last night against Beasley, against that speed off the edge, that's a tough thing to walk into. They haven't been running the ball well. So I just think what we're talking about here, and this is my belief now, the way the CBA is set up and the way we do go through preseason, September is the new preseason. It takes 4 weeks to find out who you are in the NFL, and Green Bay's finding out who they are. Dallas is finding out who they are. New England's finding out who they are. We're not going to know until week 5, really, where the NFL sits in both conferences.
And also, was there an NFL team that had a tougher start than Seattle, home, and then going to Atlanta, opening up the new Mercedes-Benz?
No, that's a totally fair point. Now, maybe we'll look back, and if Seattle's not as good as we thought, we would adjust that. But when the schedule came out, no team looked at the first 2 weeks
and
were like,
that you're predicting will win their division.
Absolutely.
And you played them week 1 and week 2.
And so you guys mentioned that the Packers don't necessarily like playing in a dome.
I never have. Look at their record in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be a concern, right? When Dallas plays in a dome, Minnesota plays in a dome, Detroit plays in a dome, Atlanta plays in a dome.
But you play 8 games. You have to develop your team around where you're going to play your 8 games. Chicago has been this way for years, all right? They got that Kentucky bluegrass. It grows a little higher. It's for a slower field, all right? Green Bay is the same way. Minnesota has always had an undersized defense and a lot of speed. Dallas, they have a lot of speed on their defense. That's why their defensive coordinator does a great job at getting those guys to move around. So you have to have a team that's around your home field. Now, Green Bay, they've had a franchise for 20 years that's been circled around that quarterback. You guys make just enough plays, and we got a dude back here that can win us the game. That's what they did with 4, and that's what they're doing with 12.
The other thing you can do, though, to really kind of make it a successful season is to look around the league, look around your conference. Where do we need to get better? I always go back to Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia early on, and it was the greatest show on turf. And for us to get where we have to go, we're going to have to beat the Rams. So that one year he comes out and he goes corner, corner, corner. First 3 draft picks. So, yeah, we're going to build our team around the 8 games that we play, but we've also got to keep an eye on who the big guys are in our conference and what do we need to do to beat that team. So I think maybe Green Bay needs to, all right, we got a great quarterback, we're doing this, but who are the big guys out there? And what do we have to do if we have to go on the road? That's why it's such a huge thing during the course of the season.
Yes.
Like you said, if you have to go through Lambeau, if you have to go through some of these places, it's a completely different thing.
Well, on paper, they get to sort of take a little bit of a break next week hosting the Bengals.
Oh,
so
they do.
We'll
they'll look good. They'll look good. Andy Dalton.
Should bet on them next week. Get a chance.
Chill.
Welcome back to First Things First. So yesterday, CC tweeted out this picture of him and Colin Kaepernick here in New York.
Oh, I thought Kaepernick was homeless.
CC, tell us what happened here. How'd you run into him, and what'd you guys talk about?
We live in the same part of town. We both live in Tribeca. We've been missing each other. There's some people that were trying to get us to kind of meet up. And I saw him and approached him, talked with him, asked him about his interest in playing. I had to do the field test.
Show me the field test.
Because
you know, because
people been saying Cap, oh, he needs to put back on some weight. Oh, he's getting too skinny. Oh, he's a vegan now, and all these other. Man, this is a football player. Now, I thought yesterday I was watching all the best players play, but there's no way that he shouldn't be on an NFL roster. He wants to play.
He told you he wants to play.
Absolutely. I mean, besides, hey, how you doing? That's the first question. Man, do you want to play some football? Because there's a lot of people out here advocating for him to play, and the worst thing would be for him, I don't know really what I want to do. No, he wants to play football. He believes he's got a gift to play football and believes that he can get a lot better as a quarterback. So it was nice to see him. It was nice to be able to see his state and talk to him and see his state of mind. And he's missing the game. All right, it's one thing in the summer, OTAs, it's one thing in training camp, but when you start seeing regular season and you start seeing people, Josh McCown, starting games in the NFL.
Brian Hoyer for his former team. They haven't scored a touchdown this year.
It starts to be a little more personal, and that's what I sensed in the conversation.
Did you get a sense, the reason many people feel he's not playing is for political reasons. Did you get a sense that maybe he's ready, he wants to put that behind him and just focus on football, or is it a package deal?
Well, he made that clear that he wasn't going to protest the national anthem. He made that clear 6 months ago. So that's not in question. Now the question is, the only thing they can argue is, does he fit into our system? Now, that's a good argument.
It'd be a better argument if Jacoby Brissett didn't just start for a team
after being in New England, traded to Indianapolis, and start a game. So, yes, it can be done, but which team will take that chance and say, you know something, it's about the best players, it's not about anything else. And then I believe Cap will be signed. But it will take another injury or two to the right team, because Cap can't go anywhere. We can't say, okay, he can just go to any team and play. All right, he's a certain player that it has to be a coach in an organization that will support his ability and how he's going to play.
There was something else interesting that happened right before you talked with Cap. That was the NFL Players Association. If people don't know how that works, that is the Association of Professional Football Players. They gave out their second Man of the Week award this year. The first one went to J.J. Watt for his hurricane relief, $37 million, I think. This one went to Colin Kaepernick he donated, I think, the $900,000 of his $1 million pledge to promote social justice, to help guys who are coming out of jail to get jobs, the different things he's done. And that was noteworthy because the Players Association doesn't do something that's going to anger their members, which are, of course, the players. And so we saw already It's chapter and verse at this point. We know the 2 head coaches he's had have talked about how good he is in the locker room. We know the last team he was on awarded him their Man of the Year. We know the NFL Players Association feels it's important enough to keep him in the consciousness. They awarded a player that's not on a roster right now, but still one of their members, with their Man of the Week. And we also know that in a world where Brian Hoyer, Josh McCown, Jacoby Brissett, Scott Tolzien have started games this year, we know he's good enough. So, we know all these things. The fact that the owners don't want to let it happen.
That's it. None of those other people you mentioned are in the business to hire him. It's not on their. That's not what they do. Their job isn't to hire him. It's all about the owners. The owners will decide whether Colin Kaepernick plays or not. Which is why what I'm going to say is, maybe if he is ready to put what happened politically behind him and just play football, and he doesn't want to talk about what happened, then why can't he just say, hey, to the owners, here I am. Everyone wants to interview. I'm ready.
Yeah, there's other players protesting now.
I understand. We're not talking about other players. We're talking about, and those guys are playing. So we're talking about.
So how can the other guys play and he can't protest?
All I'm saying, you can protest, but what I'm saying is, why not just protest all you want? I'm for his protest. I believe in his cause. I appreciate the time and money. No, I don't care. I want him to open his mouth and say, I want to play. I'm in shape.
He told me that.
A chance. He told you that because you bumped into him on the street.
He told Sean King that of the New York Daily News as well.
And there are so many people that have tried to get an interview with him and tried to approach his agent. Just, hey, tell us something.
So hold on. The NFL, no.
You've had months and months and months. I'd love to hear you say, I want to play football.
An NFL team won't call him and interview him and give him a tryout. But you want him to go out to the national media and to what? To apply for a job?
A question that everyone's been
The owners
answering.
already have decided, they've already colluded not to sign him.
There's a reason why they colluded not to sign him, or if they colluded. Reportedly, I don't know if they did or not.
Look at these bums playing.
Okay. So then put yourself out there. Maybe swallow a little bit of pride and say, hey, guys, I want to play. I'm ready. So now if you don't call me.
People keep changing why he's not employed. Right. It was, we got to wait for free agency. Then it was, we got to wait for the draft. Then it was, we got to wait for training camps. Then it's, we got to wait for injuries. And now it's, he won't talk.
I've not said that from the beginning.
If it were, okay, maybe that's what you've been saying from the beginning. It is, if getting a job in the National Football League was as simple as doing an interview.
No,
then
Nick. What? You're breaking it down and you're simplifying it. It's not that. We happen to want to hear from him. I think if he had just put himself out there and say, hey, this is my call. And I get it, CC.
You know what every other player's putting out there? They put their stats out there. Every other player's putting their stats out there.
So then put your will and your desire to want to play and you'll get your stats.
He told me he wants to play. He can't get an interview. He can't get an interview, Jenna.
All right.
No one will try him out. They try out players 5 days a week.
For the last 7 months.
Oh, he's not hidden. He's not hidden from the NFL owners.
The Giants take on the Lions tonight, and all eyes are on Odell Beckham Jr.'s ankle. OBJ has said it's a 6 to 8 week injury, and he hurt the ankle exactly 4 weeks ago today. He's questionable tonight against Detroit. CC. We ask this again. We continue to ask it. Do the Giants have a chance if Odell sits? Because I think it looks like now you were in touch with him that it's bothering him a little bit.
I mean, they're a different football team. And we got a couple of things at play. He has practiced for several days. But the thing with the high ankle sprain is that the ankle and the Achilles and the calf get very, very sore because you're trying to compensate for the ankle. So you get soreness in these other areas. He's trying to work through the soreness. He would love to play. It is truly a game time decision. And he's been released to practice. But the Giants medical staff has not released him to play in the game yet. So we'll find out tonight if the Giants are going to release him. I think that they are going to release him. But this is a very difficult injury. And given Odell's mindset, I'm still afraid. I'm right back to where I was week number 1. I know he's not healthy, but I think he's going to force himself out there through the training staff, through the workout, telling him he's not in as much pain as he is, and he's going to force himself onto the field tonight.
He's got to play. I mean, for the Giants to have a chance, he's got to play. Detroit, I do not think is a great team, but they can score some points. And we saw that the Giants have a total inability to score points, and we saw that they couldn't score points. I think this part of the season, competition really matters. What you did and against whom you did it matters a lot to me. Dallas held the Giants' offense to 3 points. Dallas then let Trevor Siemian march up and down the field. So it's not like, oh, well, they were just playing a greatly improved Dallas defense. No, it looks like that was what happened in the Giants-Cowboys game, was that the Giants just had no offense. They need Odell Beckham out there, even if he's not 100%. I know that from what you've told me, he wants to play. If he doesn't play because the team holds him out. Man, this team knows, all right, hold up. Coming up next, if you look at the schedule, after this week, we've got at Philly, at Tampa Bay. Those are not easy football games. They need the best wide receiver in football out there. And so I don't think the Giants can win this game without him. I think he's one of the only, if not the only, wide receiver in the league where I'd say that, where if he's out, his team's drawing dead. But it speaks to how talented he is and how bereft of talent the rest of that offense is.
When you talk about having him out there, it's not just having him out there for the workload, because at most is he's maybe 75% at most. So could he do more for the Giants? I don't love the word decoy, but he could do more for the Giants with his presence alone than if he wasn't in the lineup at all.
No, that's a great word choice. Way better than get jiggy with
Oh,
it,
right.
too.
Guess what? The jiggy thing has been retired officially. I will never say it
The
again.
thing with Odell, if he's on the field, they're double teaming him immediately.
Right.
Even at 75% or whatever he is.
They don't know. They don't know. What they're going to think is, if he's on the field, he's healthy.
Okay.
That's how opposing defenses treat a player. If he's out here, we're going to tackle him, and he's supposed to be healthy. So he can draw the double team, which takes one guy out of the box so you can run the ball. The Giants need to run the football, all right, and get Brandon Marshall involved. So Odell tilts the numbers in the Giants' favor, but you still have to make plays. They have to make a conscious effort to run the ball. And Brandon's got to be a huge contributor in the passing game.
To speak to your question, Jenna, since Odell came into the league, I'm not talking about passes thrown to Odell, just Eli Manning passing to anybody. With Odell on the field, he's a passer rating of 91, 5 touchdowns for every 1 interception. With Odell off the field, either because of suspension, injury, his rookie season, injury this season, he has a touchdown-interception ratio of less than 1-to-1, so more interceptions than touchdowns, and he has a quarterback rating of 75. He's just a different player when Odell's on the field, not on the field. We saw that in the final season before Odell got to New York, when Eli had 18 touchdowns, 27 picks. Obviously, a lot of those numbers are because Odell's the one catching the ball, but it's also because the other wide receivers and the tight ends have a clearer path because the defense is skewed so heavily to his side. When you add to that the fact that they don't yet have an established running game, that their left tackle, Eric Flowers, does not yet look to be an NFL caliber player, you need a guy out there that you can throw a quick slant to and go get you 60 yards. That's how they beat the Lions last year. The defense choked them out, kept it close. Odell made the game-winning play. That's the path to victory for the Giants tonight. And I don't see a path to victory, barring a Matt Stafford meltdown on national television, for the Giants tonight if Odell doesn't play.
Yes or no? Do you want him to play where he is now?
I want to watch him play.
Okay.
I want to watch him play.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review, tell us what you think, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. For Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolf. So long, everybody.